You're listening to the Chopped Podcast, episode number 155. Hey everyone, I'm Marley of the blog Namely Marley. I'm your host, and this is the Chopped Podcast. You know, this is the podcast designed for people just like you, bloggers who love food. My goal is to share with you interviews, thoughts, stories, everything related to food blogging so we can all learn together about what works with food blogging and maybe even a little bit about what doesn't. Today's guest is Lisa Huff. She's with the site Snappy Gourmet, and she also recently published her first cookbook. So we spent a lot of time talking about that and the struggles and the celebrations of writing a cookbook, and also the same thing with food blogging. But one thing that we got into that just, really set my the wheels of my mind going is we got into the topic of comparison. And I think it's such an interesting topic because it's so, I feel like as food bloggers, we can easily fall prey to that. I think whether we're on Instagram or whether we're on Facebook and you're seeing how many shares and likes somebody else is getting, and it's just those numbers really start to weigh us down, I think, after a while. And then recently I was on, some food blogging group that I'm in, and somebody mentioned that they were frustrated because there was a blogger that was getting more traffic than them, but their photography was a lot less attractive. This person was saying basically that their food photography was better than the person who was getting more traffic. And they were really frustrated. And I understand that. I have been there myself. And actually, it reminded me of tennis. Are you laughing? Because I know Addie at this point is like, everything reminds you of tennis, but there's some truth to it. Food blogging, like tennis, is always requiring more of you. I mean, you can't just have an awesome serve and expect to beat everybody that you play in tennis. You have to also know how to use the backhand and the forehand. And, there are a lot of other shots that you have to learn to master as a good tennis player. And I think the same thing is true with food blogging. You can't just have great photos and expect to be, just this overnight success as a food blogger. There's so much more to it. And I'm sharing this message with you just as I'm sharing it with myself because I fall prey to this all the time. I mean, we have improved our food photography over the years on our site. And of course, our traffic has improved a lot. But I feel like in order to keep growing, we have to keep expanding and we have to keep learning new things in different areas. So there's just more than meets the eye in food blogging. I feel like it's always asking more of you. And like Casey Marquis said in last year's episode, it's a competitive industry, food blogging is. And so you can't expect to be just good at food photography and think that as a result, your traffic is going to be better than somebody who doesn't have the same quality as food photography as you do. I mean, think about it. There is a lot more to traffic than just food photography. I mean, maybe that other blogger has a niche that leads to a lot more traffic just kind of naturally. Or maybe their niche is better defined in the first place. Maybe they have a really tight niche. And, I'm sure you've heard this before, that, having a tight niche can really help you expand your traffic. Maybe the other blogger has better recipes. They're just easy to follow. Maybe they're a chef, or maybe they've got something else going on like that helps their recipes, that helps their followers really follow their recipes. Maybe they found a way that brings their audience back time after time, like meal plans or meal prepping, those kinds of things. Or maybe she's got a cousin that runs an SEO firm out of his basement and he's sending her thousands of people, traffic her way. Or maybe her best friend is a social media guru. And, I'm trying to be a little facetious here because there are so many scenarios. And it reminds me of that statement that a friend used to say to me all the time is never judge your insights by other people's outsides. You don't know what's going on with that other blog. You don't know if they could be buying traffic. I mean, these kinds of things happen. In James Altucher's book, Choose Yourself, he says this: if you want to be successful, you need to study success, not hate it or be envious of it. If you are envious, then you will distance yourself from success and make it that much harder to get there. Never be jealous. Never think someone is, quote, lucky. Luck is created by the prepared. Never think someone is undeserving of the money they have. That only puts you one more step removed from the freedom you aspire to. I love that quote. I just feel like we all need these reminders sometimes that rather than letting yourself stay in this jealous spot, why not just move over to a spot of being inquisitive about it? What is that site doing that's better than me? What can I improve as a result of seeing that they're getting better traffic and they're doing something better? So I need to figure out what that is. Or alternatively, maybe it's just that you need to be more focused on your own content and just how you're delivering it. I think of Serena Williams in the U.S. Open a couple of years ago. All she needed to do was win that U.S. Open and she would be making tennis history. Of course, I mean, Serena, she's already made tennis history. So, I mean, really the pressure should have been off of her. But if she won that one U.S. Open, then she would have won all 4 majors in that calendar year, something she had not done before, something that would put her, to be making history, would be part of making her one of the greats, which of course she already is. But anyway, that's what she needed to do, was win that U.S. Open. And she was winning all the matches and she won and got herself into the semifinals. And her opponent was Roberta Vinci from Italy. And Roberta Vinci, I mean, if you've ever seen her play, she's not a power hitter. Serena has massive serves and her ground strokes are just, really fast and hard. And everybody expected she would have no problem with Vinci. But Vinci didn't have the pressure on her, for one thing. She didn't have to win this match. She was the underdog, and that's always kind of a dangerous situation for someone like Serena playing someone like Vinci, that Vinci doesn't have that pressure. And she knew that she didn't have power shots, but she did have finesse. And I watched the frustration growing in Serena in that match, and she did eventually lose that match to Vinci. And I imagine she must be thinking, I cannot be losing to her. I mean, this woman is doesn't have the shots that I've got. How can I be losing to her? And okay, so this is a big stretch of the imagination, but it reminds me of a match that I was playing where I was playing someone where I thought, I should not be losing to her. I should be beating her. She had terrible form. She didn't have that impressive of shots, but she got to everything is one thing. I mean, when somebody forces you to hit shot after shot, when you think you've hit a winner and they somehow get to it and somehow manage to get it back, it starts to kind of wear at you. But I also realized something. My thoughts were causing me to lose that match. I was being judgmental of that other player. I was judging her based on her form, as if I deserved to win because my form was better than hers. And I read this book, The Inner Game of Tennis, where the author talks about, I mean, he calls it something different, but my translation is basically you have the head brain and the body brain. And so basically, if you play tennis from your head brain, then you're judgmental, you're frustrated with yourself, you get mad at yourself when you miss a shot, and it's almost as if you try to think, if I could be harder on myself, then I'm going to play better. If I just say, come on, you're so stupid, stop doing these stupid shots, then as a result of that, you're going to play better. But in reality, the opposite is true. When you have that harsh internal dialogue, it actually causes you to tighten up, and then you don't play as well. And then, it just makes sense, doesn't it? You're not as relaxed as when you're practicing, and then as a result, you start to play worse. I think the same is true for food blogging. When we start comparing ourselves to others and we think we deserve to be better because, we have better photography or whatever, I feel like that's an example of using our head brain to food blog. I do it all the time, so that's why I can speak so well about it. So thank you for listening to me on my thoughts on comparison. I know I have a lot more I could say on this, but I'm trying to keep it concise. I work on this daily. And when I feel that green monster growing inside of me, I just take a deep breath and I focus. And just as if I'm in a tennis match, I tune everything else out. Especially try to tune out that head brain and just take a deep breath and clear, I call it in tennis, I call it etch a sketch it. I just kind of clean my brain off, shake it up, clean that out, clean those negative thoughts out. And once my mind is clear, then I can connect with myself. And another book that I've been reading lately, obviously I read a lot, is Gay Hendricks. And he wrote the book, I think it's called Loving Yourself or How to Love Yourself, something like that. And he talks about how it's important to learn to love those negative emotions. I know that sounds so counterintuitive. It's a little bit like telling yourself in a tennis match that the way to win is to, remove all these negative thoughts and just simply to let your body play the game as you know it to play, trust your body. That sounds counterintuitive to me. It sounds like I need to control things. If I want to win this match, I have to control what I'm doing. And in reality, you do have to trust your body a little bit more. And I feel like that's what Gay is saying in this book when he says, rather than shaming yourself or putting yourself down when you find yourself being jealous of somebody else, actually acknowledge those thoughts and to love yourself for that. Actually say, I love myself for being jealous right now. Now, doesn't that sound counterintuitive? But his point is that the more we can love ourselves for everything that we experience, then the more we love ourselves wholly, then the more we can actually kind of step into what I call our higher self authenticity. It helps that feeling pass. It helps you experience that feeling rather than shaming yourself for having that feeling. And then once you fully experience, then you can move on from it. I don't know. I thought this was really interesting. I hope that you find that helpful in your process. I know it really helps me when I go through those periods. And I loved that Lisa and I talked about that. And I thought it would be a great opportunity to, share my thoughts on, that whole thing about comparison and what goes on with food blogging. Obviously, Lisa and I talk a lot more about a lot of different things. She talks about her journey as a food blogger and how that led to the opportunity of writing a book and just all these other experiences that she's had. And she talks about the reasons why she loves food blogging. So let's get straight to it. Here's today's feature interview with Lisa Huff. Hey everyone, I'm happy to have Lisa Huff. She's of the site Snappy Gourmet, and she's now author of the book Kid Chef Bakes, and she's on the show today. Hey Lisa, welcome to the Chop Podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me today. I'm excited to talk to you.
Oh, I'm excited to talk with you too. And I feel like you're another one of those bloggers that I've seen throughout the years, and we just never have had a chance to talk. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, that's funny. I mean, I recognize your name and I don't know. Yeah, we've never talked. So yeah, I'm anxious to talk to you this morning.
Isn't that funny? You'd think in some ways food blogging is such a small community, but at the same time, it's also really big. And there's like ample opportunity. Like we've probably been in a Facebook sharing groups together or something and just never talked.
Yeah, I'm sure we've talked online at some point. We've just never talked. Yeah, in person. It's so funny. It is a small world.
Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to talk with you about so much today, but also, I think it's just helpful for people to have this kind of idea of who you are and how you got started. So I thought it might be good to start with, you could talk about why you started your site, Snappy Gourmet.
Sure. Well, I started it in 2010, which is hard to believe. It's been about 7 years. I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
I guess most of us didn't. I started it kind of on a whim. I used to enter a lot of cooking contests and recipe contests and was doing really well and just kind of got bored with it. And a lot of that was changing. A lot of the contests were becoming a lot more work and smaller prizes. So I was kind of looking for another creative outlet. And I had a few friends that were doing food blogs at the time. And we had just moved here to Connecticut and it was just looking for something to do. I'm like, well, let's give it a try. So, I grew up cooking, always loved cooking. I really didn't start Snappy Gourmet for any other reason than just like a fun hobby. And then it just kind of grew and started doing a lot of freelance work and now the cookbook. So like I said, I really just started it to share recipes with friends and family who were, driving me crazy for recipes. It was just an easy way. It was an easy way to share with a lot of people at one time. And then it just kind of has grown over the last 7 years. And like I said, now a cookbook. So it's been a very exciting adventure.
Now, what about that word snappy? What was it about that you really liked?
It's funny because when I was looking for names for my site, Snappy Gourmet definitely was not one of my first choices. But I've kind of come to love it, and it's the only name I remember. I don't even remember now what my first choices were, but I had a long list of choices, but they were all taken. So I just started playing with different words, and snappy came up, and I was like, well, that's good, because I really don't like really long, elaborate recipes. I love creating recipes, but I really don't like being in the kitchen and cooking all day long. So I really tried to come up with quicker, easier recipes for the most part. So Snappy just kind of stuck.
Yeah, it's really great to find a name that also is like, it resonates, or it tells your audience exactly what they can expect. I love that.
Exactly. But like I said, I don't even remember what I started with, which is kind of funny. I wish I do, just in hindsight. But yeah, Snappy just kind of stuck. So actually, a lot of my friends call me Snappy. They don't even call me by my first name anymore.
I like Snappy. That's a good name.
Yeah, it is kind of funny.
I'd imagine I would say, "Hey, Snappy," like clap.
Yes, they do. My husband does as well.
I love it. So were you always into cooking before that? Something had to inspire you to think, I want to go into cooking.
I always was cooking growing up. My father is Italian American. My mother is French Canadian. They both worked full time when I was growing up. So for me, cooking was a way that I could get what I wanted for dinner.
Yes.
And not, by the time they got home and we would have dinner, it was just quicker and easier sometimes for me to make dinner.
Yeah.
And then also learning to cook also got me out of other chores around the house, like mowing the lawn.
Yep.
So
I love it.
It was just something I picked up on, and I don't remember ever not cooking. I just grew up in the kitchen. I grew up in the 80s, long before the Food Network, before it was cool to cook. And I just always loved the creative outlet of it. But like I said, I don't really like spending all day in the kitchen. So I was always looking for like shortcuts and different ways to make things, and just loved the creative outlet of it.
Well, I noticed that we have something in common because we both have MBAs and we left the business world.
Oh, that's so funny. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So
that is funny. Yes.
I'm curious, was it a difficult stretch for you to think about leaving the corporate world so you could start a food blog?
Right? It is a little crazy when you put it like that.
I know.
Well, my husband is very career driven. Not that I wasn't, but he was much more career driven than I was. Mm-hmm. So we've kind of moved a lot to follow his career. And then we had children, so it was kind of difficult for me to really have that career too when we were moving every few years. So it was kind of nice to have my own little business that I could kind of take with me as we've moved and kind of grow it over the years. So I was still kind of getting that corporate feel without, I guess, the corporate hours and the politics. And so I feel like I'm still part of, the business world in a sense, but not the corporate day-to-day craziness.
I think sometimes the things I miss about my corporate job is that there's a certain sense of prestige, I guess. Like, if you could say, people recognize COO, so I'm COO, and then you get that kind of ooh response. But when I say food blogger, people are like, what?
Right. Right. Exactly. Well, I like to tell people my food blog is part of me and part of my job, but it's not everything. I usually tell people, because I do a lot of projects outside my blog. I do some, like many, food, like recipe development and food photography, and now the cookbook. And I've done a lot of freelance projects outside of the blog. So I feel like the blog and being a blogger is part of it, but it's not everything. But you're right. It is funny to tell people you're a blogger because there is kind of this stigma with, you're just, a mommy blogger at home, which is.
See, I like what the area, the vein that you're moving in on that one, because in other words, I feel like you're saying your food blog is just another tool in the toolbox of what you do. And so what is it that you think that, what would be that overall title there?
Well, I haven't come up with an overall title. I still struggle with that. Yes. So usually when people ask me what I do, I usually say, I work from home. I do a lot of freelance work. And then I kind of list off everything, and, I will put blogger in there as well. But I usually list off other things first. And it's not that I'm embarrassed or ashamed to have the blog. I think it's just very difficult for people to understand unless you're in it.
Yes. We should create some kind of really, geeky industry level language, and people would be like, "Oh, I'm not even going to ask her what that is."
Exactly. My husband works in finance and investments, and so even though I have an MBA in finance, I don't really understand what he does. So when he starts telling people what he does, they just like their eyes
roll
just
over,
kind of glass over, and they stop asking questions. So I think I think you're right. We need something like that to.
Yes, like a food influencer engineer or something like that. And
right?
people be like, what?
I like it. I think we should start that. A food blog engineer.
Okay, so I'm just curious, do you think that this corporate background that you have in the MBA, has that helped you? I feel like there's so many people who come into food blogging from so many different fields. Like I've talked to people who've got a background in architecture and background in engineering and background in teaching is really common. Do you feel like a background in business has been helpful for you as a food blogger?
I think it's definitely helped, but at the same time, it's been kind of a curse. So I kind of worked in IT as well years ago. So sometimes I feel like I need to get everything perfect, especially the finances. And I spend too much time sometimes planning and not enough time executing. And I think I overplan. And likewise, I think sometimes I feel like I know too much. And I don't mean that to sound obnoxious. It's just, then I want to do things myself instead of hiring things out. Like doing some of the programming for my website. I mean, I can do some of it. So I feel like I know too much to really spend a lot of money to hire someone, but I don't know enough to really do it 100%.
Yes.
So I feel like I'm kind of stuck in this weird position. But it's definitely helped overall. I mean, it's definitely, helped me transition from a hobby to a business. But I feel like I will never be where I want to be. I kind of have that competitive attitude where, things I always need to be making more money and doing more. And, you're kind of competing with other people. And, every year I just try to let that go and just kind of do my own thing.
Yeah, I love how you talk about, using the background of having, keeping the business side, like your books and everything, because I feel like that's an area that I get so busy, and it's not that I don't know how to do it. It's just that I get so busy in so many things, and I feel like I'm like mentally exhausted by the time it comes down to like, okay, make sure your invoices or your receipts are all together or things like that.
Exactly. So, like my husband and we used to do our own taxes, and I would keep track of all my finances. But I felt like, I was spending, because I know how to do it in a sense, but I don't know how to do it well because I don't do it 100% of the time. So we finally this year, hired out a CPA to, just help us, just to let go of that and let someone else do it. So we had time to do other things, which is really hard to let go of things that you know how to do, but there's other things that you want to spend your time on. So that's been a struggle.
Oh, I totally get you because I am one of those people. Like I love crossing off things off my list. And so it's really tempting for me to want to do it just because I can cross it off my list. And, I don't know, it's just a stupid thing, but there's a sense of accomplishment. And I don't know that we always have that in food blogging because, it just feels like there's always 1,000 things to be done,
Right. But then you don't want to give up control and let other people do it. So yeah, I've definitely struggled. I mean, I know a lot of bloggers have virtual assistants, which is great. I don't have a problem with that. I just I'm not there yet. I don't feel like I can give up control of some things, even though I know it would be good for me, good for my business. It's just a daily struggle I have of what to give up and what to do myself.
Well, I think you're in good company because I've started to realize if there is a personality type amongst food bloggers, I think it is this. I don't want to say control freak. That has a kind of negative a tone to it, but I do think there is a certain kind of we like to control things.
Yes, I think you're right. I think we're a little controlling, which I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But but sometimes it would be nice to kind of give up control. So I have been getting my kids to do little projects. My kids are 11 and 13, and my 13-year-old will edit videos for me.
Nice.
but he can be a little moody.
Oh, yeah.
So
kids can be problematic that way.
So it can be problematic. And my 11-year-old is, she'll do little projects like check links for me and, little things. So they've been helpful. But at some point, I do realize you do need to just let go. And if it doesn't come out perfect, then it's okay. Life goes on.
Oh, well, the one thing I do know is you want to make sure you tell your CPA that you're having your kids work for you, because I think there's some tax benefits to that.
Yes, my husband made sure that we pay our children and get some tax benefits.
Absolutely.
So it's turned into a family business.
So what about photography? I'm just curious, when you first started your blog, it's one thing to have interest in cooking, and then it sounds like you started doing these recipe contests and you were winning, and then all of a sudden you decided to start the blog. When you started, did you feel confident about your photography skills?
No, not at all. I had no idea what I was doing. I always hated taking pictures. I always hated getting my picture taken. I hated everything about photography. But then it's funny, it just kind of clicked in the sense that I then started to really enjoy it. So I was, I started off taking photos just because I felt like I needed them. And they were horrible. I hate looking back at some of those old photos. I'm like, what the heck was I thinking? The polka dot paper and, just craziness. But so then I got my first DSLR camera and I had no idea what I was doing. It was a lot of money. My husband was like, what are you doing? It's, a lot of money for something you don't like.
Yes.
And I took some classes. I took a local class here and I hated it. It was awful. I had no idea what it was doing. It was way over my head. But then I found some classes online that just kind of resonated with me. And it just changed my whole perception on photography and the creativeness of photography and the art of photography. And, I still feel like my pictures aren't perfect by any means, but I've learned so much over the years. And I just love learning more about it, and I feel like it really helps with, tell the story of your recipes. Not that some of the recipes necessarily have a big, crazy story behind them, but, nobody wants to eat something that looks horrible. So I think it's definitely helped my site and my business just overall grow.
Yes. I love this because I feel like it's such a common feeling that we all have when we're starting something new, like to hate it. And because we don't know enough about it to love it, Right.
It's so frustrating when you're starting because you want to be good right away. And I see that at my kids too. Like they get so frustrated when they don't know how to do something and they want to stop. But as soon as they keep going and it clicks, then it's like, oh my goodness, this is fabulous. So now I take too many pictures.
You want to be great at something, right? And it's easy to think that other people are just naturally good at things, but I haven't found too many people that are just naturally good at photography. I think they maybe, they may have a knack for styling, but for the most part, I think we have to learn this.
Yeah, I think especially with photography, there's so much with the cameras and the settings. And like you said, I think you could be good with the styling or kind of the artsy side of it, but to really know the mechanics of the camera and the editing. And I don't think it's something you just can wake up and learn in 2 seconds. It's a lot of software to learn. And
oh my goodness. I still don't think I know it all. I know enough to be dangerous.
Absolutely not. Yes, I feel like I still have a long way to go. There's still a lot of classes I could take, but I enjoy it now, so I don't mind learning.
Yes. For me, I think the thing I really loved about photography is I feel like it opened up my eyes to the light. Like I just never even paid attention to light before.
Exactly. So one of the classes I took, that was one of the first things he said was, once you get into photography, you will see the world in a totally different way. You will see, natural light, like the sun. You will see things outside differently. You will see shadows differently. You will see colors differently. I think it's so true. Yeah. I thought he was crazy because I went like, what is he talking about? Yes. But now, I totally get it. So even just walking outside, I feel like I just appreciate and see things in a different light than I did years ago.
Oh. So true. So did you have a moment when you were early on in your food blog that you realized that this could actually, I mean, did you start it thinking could be a business, or did you have a moment where, it was a hobby at the beginning and then you realized, hey, wait, this could be a business?
Yeah, when I started, it was definitely a hobby. And it was partly a hobby because when I was entering cooking contests, to enter a lot of the cooking contests, you had to be what was considered an amateur. And if you were doing anything food related, such as recipe development, and getting paid for it, you couldn't enter some of the big cooking contests. So as the contest started changing, a lot of the contests started turning into online voting contests where they would select finalists and put the recipes online, and then whoever got the most votes would win the prizes. It just started turning into a lot more work. And the prizes started getting smaller. And at the same time, I was really enjoying blogging and doing my own recipes and not having to follow the rules for different companies and brands. It just seemed like a natural transition to kind of give up the contest and kind of start creating my own business.
And I imagine that's probably when you started putting ads on your site and working with brands and things like that.
Exactly. So then I started looking into ads and started, growing my site a little more and doing more work on the side for money. When I started getting emails like, oh, we'll pay you. And I was like, what? You'll pay me? Great, I'll take it. And that was kind of around the same time as the contest prizes were getting smaller and a lot more work. And they wanted, videos and the online voting. And it just seemed like an easy transition. I felt like it all happened for a reason. And I would have never had the book. I would have never done a lot of the freelance projects if I was still doing a lot of the cooking contests. So
it sounds like it worked perfectly, though, because you probably made a lot of good contacts within industry too, right?
I did at the time, but they seem to move around so much. It's really hard to keep track of some of those people.
Yeah.
So it really wasn't as good as I thought it would be as far as having contacts.
Yeah.
It was hard to find them, or a lot of them got married, so their name changed, or they got out of the business, and so unfortunately not as much as I would have liked.
But still, you had a blog and people were working with you. I mean, I can just hear this kind of steady, gradual growth in both, your site and the brands that you're working with, and it seems like this is a career path that really worked for you.
Yes, it was definitely, steady. It was slow. It was definitely slow. It's not something that, you hear about these blogs that just like blow up in a couple weeks and they're making a crazy amount of money. It definitely wasn't that, and it's still not that by any means. For me, it's more it's a part-time job with full-time hours, I guess.
Yes.
I'm not making a crazy amount of money, but I'm doing it because I love it, and I'm doing projects that I enjoy. I'm not doing it just for the money and taking every project that comes my way. I'm doing, some stuff for the blog, and I'm doing some stuff outside of the blog. So, if I wasn't doing projects outside of the blog, it would be easy to really focus on the blog and to really grow it. But then I would really miss those other projects.
Yes.
So, trying to balance both has definitely been difficult, but it's been much more fulfilling for me. It's not for everyone by any means.
I think we're kind of kindred spirits because I can easily get bored. I need to have different things going on,
Exactly. Same thing. I get bored quickly, just like the cooking contest. I was starting to get really bored with them. They just weren't fulfilling.
Yeah.
And it just was a good transition to try something new. So I always like trying something new more than doing it for the money. But I realize not everyone has that luxury. Some people really need the money and they need to get as much money as they can, and they'll do whatever it takes. And that's fine. Not judging that.
Right.
It's just not for me.
It's not been your MO. It's like, in other words, your business plan has been on a different, and I think that's so important for people to recognize that people have different goals in mind when they have a food blog.
Exactly. I think some people just focus on the, growing your stats and the money and the competitiveness. Like you got to make more and more and more and more. And it's so easy to get caught up in that.
Yes.
But as I've gotten older and, realize more and more, how short life is, I just don't want to be that.
Yeah.
And, it's definitely a daily struggle because I do have that competitiveness where I, want to keep growing and making more money. But at the same time, it's like, I want to spend time with my family. I want to spend time with my kids. I want to go on vacation. I don't want to be tied to, the business.
Yes.
So, there's definitely things I've wanted to do to grow my business or maybe other projects, but I know that the time involved is going to take away from so much other things. I just can't do it.
So was one of the projects that you're really happy to be working on the book that you just published?
Why, yes, actually it is. Funny you should say that.
Well, I mean, I think Cookbook is an example of one of those things where it really does need to be a love project, right?
It definitely was a love project.
Yeah.
You don't do a cookbook for the money generally, or really other reasons. I had never really, it wasn't one of those people who's like, oh, I need to do a cookbook. I just have to have a cookbook. But this project kind of just fell in my lap, and it just seemed like a good time, and it seemed like a good topic. It was kind of a kid-focused book, and my kids were really excited, and they wanted to help. So everything just kind of fell in line, and it definitely was a crazy amount of work, but I'm so glad I did it. There were definitely times I was like, I don't know that I can keep doing this because I had to give up a lot during that time to get it done.
Yeah.
Couldn't really work on the blog much. Couldn't do other projects. I really had to focus in on the book. But in hindsight, I'm glad I did it. I'm really happy, that I did it. I think it turned out well.
I love that.
I learned a lot in the process.
I feel like it's a book to people or kids that, maybe they don't have that parent in the kitchen really teaching them things. It feels like that kind of book for a kid.
Right. So it's a kid's book, but I think people just assume if you hear like a kid's cookbook that it's kind of for like preschoolers and it's like a picture book and you're going to learn to make butterfly sandwiches and dinosaur pizzas. So we wanted to do something that was for slightly older kids who are really like watching a lot of those baking shows on TV right now, who really wanted to step up from those butterfly sandwiches and picture cookbooks to learn a little bit more about the basics of baking without it being condescending or too much of an adult baking book. So it was kind of a transition between those picture basic, smoothie and sandwich books to an adult baking book.
Yeah, I mean, there's like an education section in there, like a baking school section. I love that.
Right. So there's a couple chapters on some of the basics of baking, as well as, some of my favorite tools and appliances, for kids just getting started. So it's kind of, it's good for kids who do have the parents who can help them in the kitchen, but then also for the ones who kind of just want to do it on their own.
Yeah, I could even see an adult that's, that hasn't really been around cooking very, like even like a young adult that's just got their first house. I could see this is really spells it out very simply.
Exactly. Actually, I've had a lot of friends who don't cook, don't bake, and they're like, forget the kids.
Yes.
Like, this is perfect for me because, the recipes, there's a wide range of recipes. Some of them are very simple with not a lot of ingredients, and some are a little bit more elaborate, but no extensive French gourmet type recipe. So they're pretty simple baking, traditional type recipes.
Sounds like you could slap a different cover on this book and give it a different title and you'd have a whole new market.
You're right. You're absolutely right. Yes. Which is funny. So I have had a hard time trying to explain to people, like, even though it's for kids and, we wrote it for kids and we wrote it for kids, like the ages of my kids, it really is an all-purpose traditional baking book for anyone who just wants like a good biscuit recipe or like a good peanut butter cookie. nothing over the top fancy. It's not diet specific. It's very traditional in the sense it's not a lot of gluten-free type recipes, which are fine. It's just not this.
How long did it take you to write the book?
Oh gosh, I did it probably in less than 2 months.
Oh my goodness.
Well, let me back up. The first round of everything was done in probably about 2 months. And then there were a lot of rounds of edits and recipe changes. And, the whole thing was probably about 6 months.
Still, that's really fast.
It was fast. But I know it's not for everyone, but I can't imagine dragging it out much more.
Get her done, right?
Right. Because if I dragged it out for 2 years, I still would have worked on it every single day for 2 years, constantly tweaking things. And, we were talking about letting things go. I just kind of reached the point where I just had to let it go. Like things.
Well, there is that kind of a point of diminishing returns, right? Where
exactly
you could continue working on it, but is that going to make it that much better?
Exactly. That's exactly where I was at. I'm like, well, I could tweak this recipe a little bit more, but some people are going to like the recipe and some people aren't. Regardless,
yes.
I mean, there's just only so much you can do. I mean, there's recipes in the book that I love, and I know they turn out fabulous, but they may or may not be favorites of somebody else.
Yes.
So I could work on, you could work on the book for the rest of your life and it will just never be 100% the way you want it because you will always want to change things.
And you change every time, right? It's like if you were to build a house and you built it perfectly for the way you like it now, and then 6 months you come back and go, why did I put the bathroom here? I should have had it over there.
Exactly. Right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly it. But overall, I mean, I'm thrilled with how it turned out. I'm really happy with all the recipes. I can't imagine, like I said, doing it any differently.
Yeah.
I know it's not for everyone to do in a short amount of time, but I just wanted to get it done because I just know my personality that I would never get it done if I didn't have a short timeline. So
I'm curious if you feel like after this process of preparing a recipe book, if you feel like that's in any way changed the way you approach like the recipes that you show on your blog.
I feel like it's kind of focused me a little bit more in a sense. So I really didn't work on my blog a whole lot during that 6 months. I kind of just put everything else to the side and tried to really focus on the book. So I feel like now coming back to the blog and the recipes, I feel more focused and I feel like I can work a little more efficiently because with the book, with the deadlines, I had to work quickly and more efficiently and just really have a plan. So now going back to the blog, and I'm just starting to go back to the blog now, so whether this works or not, I don't know yet, but I feel like I'm just a little more efficient. Like I can let things go more. Things are not going to be 100% perfect, and I'm okay with that. I just, just have to let some things go.
Yeah, I feel like the idea of writing a cookbook kind of freaks me out because I feel like there are so many times in the blogging process that like I'll mix up steps 1 and 2 or, like it's the right stuff.
Right.
I'll publish it and I'll realize afterwards, I was like, oh, I can't even imagine publishing a cookbook because of that.
Well, the great thing about a cookbook is you have editors who go through. So I had some really fabulous editors who, a few rounds of editors who kind of went through. So the first editor went through and really, just made sure things kind of made sense and in the right order and kind of rewrote some of my words where I had trouble explaining things.
Yes.
So it was kind of nice having that second set of eyes she really got my voice down. I mean, I don't want it to sound like, she changed things and it's not mine. It really is mine. It's my words. She just made it easier to read because writing is definitely not my thing. I mean, I can write recipes, but to try to explain things, it's just not my area of expertise by any means. So she really helped me get through that. as well as the other editors who really, took another look through everything. So,
oh, I see what you're saying. So how nice would it be if we could have an editor for the blog, right?
Yes. It would be very nice if you could have like 3 editors go through every single thing on the blog, but I'm probably a lot of money, I'm guessing.
I imagine it would be a lot of money for, to pay somebody to go through. I guess it just means like spending one more minute,
Right.
looking it over. But oftentimes I feel like I'm in this, even though I try to work ahead, I feel like I find myself in this situation where I'm like, I feel urgent for some reason to hit publish. I think maybe it's that whole boredom thing. Like, I just want this out. I want it out there,
Yes, exactly. I totally understand. I just want things out and ready to move on.
Yes. Because even though my audience is just now seeing that recipe, I've been working on it for a while. So I'm just like done with it. Let's get it out there. And then I'll find out, I forgot to put cup, and it's like, it says half cocoa. It's like, instead of half a cup, and stuff like that drives me crazy.
Yes, I get those emails all the time. Like, I think you forgot to list one of those ingredients in your recipe. And I was like, what? No, I couldn't have. And then I go back. I was like, oh my God. How could I forget that?
You make me feel so much better because that happens to me, and I feel like I'm like the only one this must happen to.
Oh no, definitely not. I don't like proofreading my own material, and I know you should. I know you should proofread. I don't like proofreading. I don't like listening to myself. I've done some stuff on TV. I don't like watching myself. I feel like it's over. It's done. I can't fix it. So just like hurry up and move on. As fast as I can.
Right, exactly. and sometimes I even read it. I think sometimes I've read it so many times, and so by the time I publish, I can't even see it. Even if it was like this glaring typo, I would not be able to see it.
I'm with you on that one. Editing is not my thing.
So sometimes I feel like it's like it takes a village. Like
it takes a village.
I always have somebody who comments and says, "I think you forgot, the cup or the teaspoon." I was like, "Okay, thank you. I'll go in there and fix that."
Yes, you need those readers who tell you all the places you screwed up on.
That's right. And usually people are very friendly about it. I do occasionally get one that's like, somebody who's like preparing Thanksgiving dinner. And it's like, I don't know what to do. Yeah.
Right. And then you don't get that message until like after the fact, and then you feel horrible because you couldn't help that person. It's too late now.
I know. Yes. Okay. So what for you has been like, what would you consider the thing that you love most about your career, whatever you call it, but with one facet being a food blogger?
I love how flexible it is, in the sense that I can do as much or as little as I want. I can work things around my kids' schedule and our family's schedule. So I like having that flexibility. But then, of course, the flip side is the downside is, there's no salary. The more
Guaranteed.
I work, the more I get paid. Yeah. So when I'm not working and taking time off, then it's less money for me. Yes. So, but I definitely like the flexibility for sure.
Yeah, and that may mean that it's 3:00 on a Saturday and you're testing recipes, but it does mean that at 3:00 on a Tuesday you can go watch your kids' performance or something.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So it's been if I was still in the corporate world, especially, so I live in Connecticut outside New York City. My husband commutes to New York. It's about an hour and a half commute each way.
Oh my goodness.
Which is normal around here. I mean, a lot of people do it. It's, not considered really awful. But we grew up in the Midwest where, people did not have long commutes. So if we were both working in the city, we would just have no life. And it would be really difficult on the kids. So it's been nice for at least, one of us to kind of be home and kind of, hold things together, with the house and the kids and, just our family. Then, if we both were working in the corporate world, I don't know how we would do it.
Yeah. What part of the Midwest did you grow up in?
I grew up in Michigan, but we've moved around a lot.
Oh, yes.
So we grew up in Michigan, we've lived in Iowa, we lived in Alabama, and now Connecticut. So
Okay, so just imagine yourself as the person that you are now, but with all the information that you have, but put yourself back in that place where you first started your blog. What's one thing that you wish you knew, that you would do differently knowing what you know now?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. I think I would have, we've been talking a lot about letting things go. And when I started, it was just a hobby, but I felt like I had to just work so hard and put a lot of hours in it and, really pump out a lot of content and work with a lot of brands and just trying to juggle it all. I felt like I spent so much time trying to make everything perfect and juggling. I wish I could go back and tell myself, like, just let it go. It will all work out okay. Enjoy other things in your life besides, your business.
Oh, that's good advice. Make sure you take time for yourself and have balance in your life.
Exactly. Try to find more, and I don't think I necessarily did a horrible job at it. I just, you're trying to feel things out and try to figure everything out, that you spend a lot of time trying to pave your way. And then at the same time, as you get older and you see people you care about, getting sick and passing away, and, and things happen in your life, and then then you start appreciating everything around you and your friends and your family and your life. And, at that point, it's almost too late, because it's like, oh my gosh, I wish I had done this, 10 years ago. I wish I had made more time for the other things in my life that I enjoy. I mean, I do enjoy the blog. I enjoy doing the recipes and the cooking, and it's very fulfilling for me. Yeah. But at the same time, it's not 100% of where I want all my time to go.
Oh, I think that's so smart, to not let your identity be taken up with, how many likes you got on Twitter or something.
Right.
Or Twitter's a bad example. Instagram would be better.
Right. That's okay. I knew what you meant.
Yeah. I think we can get carried away with that sometimes. It's like, that post didn't deliver like I wanted it to. And it's like, it's just so not what it's all about.
Exactly. But I do feel like, it's still a daily struggle. Yes. I mean, it's still, I still get caught up in things and like, oh, wow, like I really just need to take a step back. And, I've gotten better as I've gotten older, but it's still a struggle, especially, you hear other people talk and they talk about how much money they're making and their traffic and their numbers and their stats and how many cookbooks they've done. And you want to compete with all of that. But I mean, I know I can't keep up with all of that. So at some point, you just have to let things go and just, let it be what it is and just be happy.
Yes, I really feel you on this, because I've been thinking about this a lot lately too, because I can be pretty competitive sometimes. And sometimes I just have to like turn all that external noise off and just focus on, who I am and what my goal is and what I'm supposed to be doing.
Right, exactly. I think sometimes you just need to surround yourself with, good people, good friends, and just let the competitiveness go.
I agree.
I think sometimes I would get really caught up in a lot of the online groups and blogging groups and other bloggers, instead of just, and listening and seeing what they were doing instead of just doing my own thing. Yes. And now, especially since the book, and I've had time to kind of refocus, I've felt myself just kind of doing my own thing more. And I don't really, not that I don't care what other people are doing, I don't feel the need to kind of follow the crowd and, do everything they're doing.
I love that, because you're still very involved in, whatever your business, we're joking around about, the umbrella term. One of the prongs off of that was your blog, and then the other work that you're doing. And one of the other prongs then is this book now. And so you're still involved in the umbrella of of the company that you have. But it's you took a break from one of those prongs, and now you feel a little more focused and clear about what you're going to do. I love that.
Right. When it's funny, because like the book was so much work, yes, but it was so fulfilling. And I feel like there were definitely times where I'm like, I can't do this. I need to quit. Like, I'm done with the book. I mean, there literally was blood, sweat, and tears that went into this book, all three, literally. But it really was kind of this eye-opening experience because I could kind of step away from everything else and kind of refocus where I want to go in the future. And then it's okay not to follow the pack of where, what other people are doing, and just, do what makes you happy and fulfill your own needs.
It's like that old saying, you can't see the forest for the trees. I think in some ways it sounds like, when we're right in the thick of it all.
Exactly.
It's like we just can't, how could we expect ourselves to figure that out? So taking a little break, and I think that's so good.
Yeah. So, I mean, the book wasn't something I really set out to do, but I feel like the timing was perfect. Like, I feel like it was meant to be.
Yeah, and I believe there's a lot of value to having, now you're an author, and there's a lot of value to that as a food blogger as well. I think for your audience, they'll see you as this author, that's important.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, I'm excited to have the book and, to be an author, but I guess I never really thought of it as like, oh, now I'm an author. For me, it was just, a project that I could give to my readers and give to my kids, and kind of have this legacy of, now my kids have this, if and when something happens to me, my kids will have this book that they helped me with, and, they can give it to their kids. And it was just kind of, a fun family experience.
Yes. It's interesting to hear you describe it as a fun family experience when you say there's blood, sweat, and tears involved too.
Right. Yeah, it definitely wasn't fun 100% of the time. Let me rephrase.
Yeah, that's just life though, right? It's not fun 100% of the time, but there's so many great moments.
But, looking back, working on the book, my daughter, who's 11, she loves to cook and loves to bake, but I feel like, we've all just been so busy in our own things that, she really hasn't, my kids really haven't been in the kitchen with me as much as I would like, because I was always busy trying to get something done.
Yeah.
But with the book, she was in the kitchen helping me, like, measure out ingredients and, giving me her opinions. And I felt like it was the first chance, as crazy as it sounds, where we were really in the kitchen together a lot. So sweet. It was nice.
And she's 13?
So my daughter's 11, my son is 13. Okay. So I mean, he helped too. He's a really great taste tester. So he would always taste things and let me know his opinions, and would help with other projects. My daughter was the one who was, like, actually in the baking with me. So it was really nice to spend that time with her. Like, we would have baking marathons, like, literally, 12 plus hours a day. And she was right there with me, and we had the best time. So that was nice.
That's really great. I love to hear that. I love to ask these questions at the end of the interview. Are you game?
Sure. As long as they're easy questions.
They're just all fun.
Okay, that's perfect.
What's one food item you can't live without?
Chocolate.
That's such a great answer.
I mean, right? Who could not live without chocolate?
Any particular kind of chocolate? Milk, dark?
I've kind of grown to love dark chocolate.
Me too.
Isn't that funny?
Yes.
I always hated it, and now I'm like, oh my God, I love it.
I have this video on my site. It's from YouTube of these kids the first time they try dark chocolate, and you should see the facial expressions they make.
I'll have to look for it. Maybe it is kind of an acquired taste, but everything else tastes so sweet to me now that I love the dark chocolate.
I do too, and I like really, really dark. Like, I think I have one that's 80% dark chocolate. I love that one.
Oh my gosh, that's really dark.
It's kind of bitter. Yeah. But how do you just, like, have a bar, you eat it, or is there a favorite way that you eat your chocolate?
I'm not really a candy type person. For me, it's more like ice cream is my weakness. Okay. I love ice cream.
And it's always chocolate.
Any kind of chocolate, ooey gooey, crazy combination ice cream, I'm all over it.
That sounds so good. And maybe with a brownie underneath it.
Yeah. Now you are talking my language. A hot fudge brownie sundae has my name all over it.
I was going through a really, really bad time in my life, and my sister actually told me, you need to go get yourself a drink. And I said, well, actually, I think what I need is a hot fudge sundae.
Oh my gosh, we are like kindred spirits. Yeah. That's totally me. I would always turn to a brownie sundae.
Yes, over a drink. I mean, I'm not putting a drink down at all. I like a good drink every now and then, but really what I go to for comfort is the sundae.
Me too. I go for the ice cream more. I mean, like you said, I'm all for a good cocktail, like a chocolate dessert cocktail, perfect. But I would always go for the brownie sundae or a cookie, like a warm cookie sundae. That's good too.
That's good too. Yeah. Okay, what's the favorite app on your phone?
Oh gosh. Well, I'm actually addicted to Toy Blast right now, which is not really an app. It's more of a game on your phone.
That works. I don't even know what it is though. What is it?
It's kind of like Candy Crush, but I'm completely addicted to it. It's awful. But as far as other apps, I really don't use a lot of apps. Which is I do like the photography apps. I do use Snapseed quite a bit.
Well, just so you know, there is science showing that playing games is good for your brain. So there's some positives to it.
Oh, perfect. Yes. Good. That's good because my brain could use all the help it could get these days. So
I know the feeling,
I'll take it.
Especially on some days.
Yes.
Okay. Do you have time for TV at all? And if you do, what's your favorite show?
Oh gosh, my favorite show. My favorite show, this is going to sound so nerdy, but it's Shark Tank. I love watching Shark Tank and these, people come on, these entrepreneurs with these ideas and, try to get money. And I love seeing what they come up with and the creativeness of it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm kind of addicted to it.
Really? I can see where that could happen because you're curious about how they're going to pitch it. I mean, there's so many angles you could look at it from that,
Right. And I love those type of shows where it's not, I love shows that are like series, but, like This Is Us is, a great show and I love that show. But if you miss an episode or you need to walk out of the room for 5 minutes, it's hard to come back. Like Shark Tank, I feel like it's kind of an easy show. It's like a low commitment show where you don't have to follow it week to week or, you can walk out of the room and come back. And I like those low commitment reality type shows.
It's really good. Okay, so how can people find you online?
So I have the website snappygourmet.com, and then I'm also Facebook is probably the next big thing. Snappy Gourmet on Facebook. Pinterest and Twitter are probably the next two, and email. People can always email me at lisa@snappygourmet.com.
Are you Snappy Gourmet across all social media?
Yes, I was lucky. I was able to get Snappy Gourmet on everything.
Wow, that is lucky.
If you look up Snappy Gourmet, I am everywhere.
I love that. Lisa, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with me. I had a wonderful time.
Me too. Thanks so much.
Thanks to Lisa Huff for being my guest on today's episode of the Chopped Podcast. Are you on the Chopped mailing list? You'll get an awesome guide for growing your audience based on the countless number of discussions I've had with other food bloggers. In addition, you'll be on the Chopped VIP list, so you'll get discounts and be in the first to know group. So go to chopped.academy and scroll down to the bottom of the page and you can sign up there. Thanks to everyone for your reviews of the Chopped Podcast on iTunes and Stitcher. That really helps get the word out to others and it helps our show tremendously. Please keep spreading the word. You inspire me and I hope today's show was helpful and inspirational to you as well. Now go forth and be your best you.